Okay, so while you finish loading up your ZBrushes in Zoom, I'm just going to start chit-chatting about ZBrush and the interface a little bit. So when you open ZBrush, it'll come up with probably a pop-up window. Just close it. We don't need that. If your ZBrush opens up looking like this with all of these menus and the presets, you can just press hide. Oh no, where's my hide button? Normally it's right there, but this tiny screen isn't showing it. Oh dear. I didn't think I'd encounter a problem already. Close, I don't want you. Oh, I've forgotten the hotkey. I think it's just comma. Oh, cool, yeah, it's just comma. Just close it with comma. Sweet, so you will have a little window like this, and if you draw in here, it's just going to create all of these little 2D planes. Great start, your model's looking fantastic. No, we don't want that. So to clear your interface, you can just do Command N on a Mac or Control N for new on a PC. That's just going to wipe everything clear. If you do this later on when you have stuff in your scene that you want, it's not going to delete anything. It's just refreshing the viewport, and you will be able to access your sculpt through the tool menu. Cool, so let's talk about the interface. We have got obviously the display here. If you're at home and the display feels really small, you can double it. If you go to the document tab, you can go to double, and it'll just make your screen bigger. I have to do that at home because my screen is large, but on the Cintiq, it looks, you know, fairly digestible, so no worries there. Right, so we have got a couple of the main things up here in the menu, the draw and edit, move, scale, rotate, which have the same hotkeys as Maya, by the way, so W, N, R. And then we've also got our intensity, so our RGB intensity, our Z intensity, our focal shift, and our draw size. So those are the ones that I want to point out. The focal shift is this, if we look at my mouse, there's a big circle and then a smaller one inside. The focal shift is the smaller one and the draw size is the bigger one. It's essentially your brush size, and the focal shift is just how intense the center is. If it's a wider, if we increase or decrease the focal shift, you can see that it's adjusting there. Cool, we'll get more into that stuff once we start doing some actual sculpting. But for now, I just want to say, do not use your mouse in ZBrush. It's not going to get you really anywhere. You will want to use your, whatever this is, your pen. You want to use your pen because it's got that sensitivity. And ZBrush is really good at picking up on your pen sensitivity. So we will want to use that. Off to the side here, we have the tool menu. So the tool menu is where you will find all of your sculpts. So if we have a new ZBrush open, obviously there's nothing here. We've just got this golden S. If we click on here, we can create a Z-sphere. So we can just click on that, drag out in your space, and if you hold shift, it'll just snap to being straight. You don't need to worry about snapping it if you don't want to, but it's just kind of fun to do that. Right, and then immediately after you've drawn it out, you want to go to edit up the top here. If you don't do that, you'll start drawing out over and over again. Just press Command N to clear and draw it out again, have another go, and then press edit. So everybody have a go at that and make sure that you have your little circle and you've pressed edit. Right, so we have our first piece of geometry. The location of all of your tools in your current session are just over here, and you can see them by their little image. If you want to see them in list form, you just open this tab directly under tools, which is subtool, and you'll see it right there, your little Z-sphere, and it's just called Z-sphere. So what a Z-sphere is a really great method of plotting out your sculpt. So it can be used to essentially create a really rough version of it. So I'll show you what that means. So if I have my Zsphere here and I've just gone to edit mode, you'll see if I hover over it with my pen, there's a little anchor and a little circle in the middle. If we click and drag again, it's going to create a new appendage. If you click and drag, you can increase the size. Now, if you want to move this around, you can just go to move by pressing W, and you'll see that it takes you off the draw mode. So before we had draw highlighted and edit was highlighted, now we're in move. You no longer draw. So if I draw out on here, you can see it's not creating a new one, it's just moving it in space. Cool, so everybody have a go at creating a little appendage. If you want me to go over that one more time, just sing out. Cool, just press comma. Yep. And I'll just show you again, eh? All right, so let's just delete that. Cool, so completely new screen. I want to go Command N. I want to go Command, never mind. Cool. Right, we're not doing that. We can just click on the Zsphere. So if you haven't drawn anything out yet, you'll have a golden S. You can just click on the golden S and there will be a menu and you can click on Zsphere in there. Wait a second. So in draw mode, you can draw out these new ones and you can move them around and scale them around in these other modes here. And you can just use the hotkeys for that. Same ones as Maya, scale, move. If you want to go back to draw, the hotkey is Q, so right next to W, and you can draw again. Whoop. So when you have a few, you can still move them independently, but you can also move the bones, and it keeps your parameters intact. It just rotates it from the ball point. So you can see how this would be really handy to create limbs, tails, all of that stuff. Just plotting out your whole character. If you want to delete one, you just press Alt and click, or as a command. Oh, you have to be in draw mode. Press Alt, click, Alt, click, Alt, click, and you're done. Sweet. So if we are just starting from the beginning again, I just want to point out the little head in the corner. You see, if I rotate in my screen, and that's just by using my pen and tapping and moving, you can see the perspective of this head is changing, and that's because we're moving around in the space. So that's a good way to just refresh yourself on where you're looking. So I want to be dead on, you can just click on it. And if you want to be working on a character that has symmetry, you can very easily do that too. So for symmetry, you just go up to transform, activate symmetry, and it'll be defaulted into X. So you can see my one's not quite perfect because I've been fiddling around with it. So I want to restart. Cool. So to restart, you can go off edit. I want to create a new Zsphere, drag it out, press shift, press edit, and move around in my space. So I can see that there's some artifacting. This happens often with ZBrushing, where you have this artifacting happening in your viewport. What you can do is just press Command N, and it's going to refresh your space. Cool. So I want to be dead on, transform, activate symmetry. It's best if you do that straight away so that it's not so confusing later. It doesn't confuse your model. Cool, so I can draw out from there. If you have clicked and you're dragging out and you're fiddling with the scale and you get it to a certain point where you like the scale, keep holding it down and then press Command, and then it'll start allowing you to drag out. So that's another way to do it if you don't want to hop between move and scale so much. This is a little bit more something that you would do when you have a little bit more confidence. So don't stress if you can't really get this part here, but just know that it's possible to do that too. Draw out, hold Command, and pull. Draw out, hold Command, and pull. Just like that. If you want to make a torso or something that's centralized, if you hover near the middle, you'll see that it'll snap automatically to create one in the center. So that's really helpful too. Drag that out. So if we take a look around, we can see all of these little pipes, like little vacuum cleaners, and we can move them all very easily as long as you're off draw mode. Like this. Cool. So if you would like to preview, if you're seeing me snap the view, by the way, that's just me moving and then pressing Shift, and you'll see that it snaps. Some of these navigation things just take a little bit of experience. If you're ever lost in your space, a great way to just recalibrate yourself is pressing F. F is just going to focus on your model. And then from there, you can use along the side here, move, zoom, and rotate. So if you want to zoom out, you can just click and drag that zoom button. If you want to move, you can click and drag the move, and the same with rotate. Press F to focus. Cool. Okay, so now you've all got a little bit more familiarity with the Zsphere concept. Let's get into it a little bit more. So back in draw mode, if you want to see how your model is looking outside of the Zsphere mode, just press A and you can see the geometry there. Look at that. It's a little gremlin. Actually, it looks a little phallic, so I'm just going to change that. Back to A. Back to move. There we go. Now it looks different. Now we've got a little guy. Just going to zoom out. Back to draw mode. Hotkey is Q for draw mode. And move that around. Now I have a frog thing. Wicked. Okay, so hopefully you all got some kind of little monster. And if you press A, you can see how it would look once we do the skin. So this is its own tool that I recommend that you save out as you go. So with ZBrush, saving is a bit different. If you go up to, where would you even find it? Where do people go? Document maybe and save. I think it's going to save your whole ZBrush folder, and that's going to save all of these trials that you've done with the different spheres and all of the history that you just don't need. It's so not necessary to save your whole ZBrush file. What you do instead is you save your tool. So all of these little sculpts are called tools. I don't know why, but they are. And in our tool menu, you have load tool and save as. So those are the two buttons you'll be using to, once you open ZBrush, you'll click on load tool and you'll bring in your saved tool. So what a saved tool is going to do if I look in my subtool menu and we have my little ZSphere gremlin and I go up to save as, I can just save it as gremlin boy and hit save. And now when I load up ZBrush, I can just go to load tool and pull in gremlin boy, just like that. And you don't need to save your ZBrush folder at all because it's just going to create a whole lot of mess. Sweet. So yeah, recommend saving your Zsphere version of your monster just because it's always good to save your stages and name them well. So I would name Gremlin Boy Zsphere version 1. And then when I append him, which I'll show you soon, I'd save that tool as Gremlin Boy appended skin version 1. Cool. It's very important that you label your files and your tools correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be opening them and checking them all, and it's just not a fun time. Wicked. Okay, so I'm happy with this. What I want to do is create that skin permanently and start working on it. So in order to do that, we want to, you've got two options. You've got unified skin and you've got, oh, did I resume the recording? Yes. We've got unified skin and adaptive skin. So those are located in this menu down the side again. So we have all of these different things and we'll get into them later, but there's unified skin and adaptive skin at the end. So if I make a unified skin, it's going to create it in my tool menu. So over here we can see skin, Gremlin Boy, and it's created this unified blobby mess. So that's one option for you. The other one, which is most people's preferred one, because it creates some nice geometry, is to use adaptive skin. So if I go to adaptive skin, you can go make, and it'll make a new tool up here in our little tool set. And it's this one here with the same look as our preview. Remember, if we press A, you can see that preview. So that previews your adaptive skin. Sweet. So this is where I'm at. This is a totally new skin. I can't change back to Zspheres from here, which is why it's good to save your Zsphere version if you really want to keep it. Remember, that's just save as up in this menu, the tool menu. Okay. Wicked. All right. So you might want to, well, we will make you do this later on in this assessment, but use reference images. So you'll create a orthographic drawing of whatever it is you're modeling. So if you're making your orthographic drawing of your creature, you'll have a front, you'll have a side, you'll have a back, all of those things. When you want to use your reference for modeling alongside it, there are a couple of ways you can use ZBrush for reference imaging. I'll show you just one, and I have a video that I can link that shows you 5 different ways, and they're all kind of up to your personal preference. But I'll show you one for now, one that's just super easy to turn on and off. So if you look to the side again here, this little menu set along the edge, we've got floor. If we click on floor, it's going to create the bottom plane like you see in Maya, for example. And if you look really closely, and if you have good eyesight, you can see that in the floor little menu, it has an X and a Y and a Z. So currently Y is toggled on, which is why we can see it. If we turn on X and Z, it creates those other planes. I'm going to turn off Y, and I'm going to zoom out. And we can put images on the back and on the side. So what I'm going to do is just that. So if I bring in an image. Cool, so what we can do is slap our downloaded images onto those reference planes. To do that, we go up to the draw tab and we go down, down, down to front and back and left and right. So if we do one at a time, we've got front and back here. In map 1, if you just click on map 1, it'll come up with all of these different images. Actually, I could have just used the default one. Yeah, let's use a jelly beans. So now I have this little jelly beans reference. If I want to do it to my side, I do the same thing, go into draw, scroll down, and in left and right, map 1, and let's do the import this time. So there's a little import button at the end of that window. If I go to my downloads, grab that little frog. Where are you, frog? You know what? I can't find it. So let's use clear instead. So now we have clear for our side view. So this is a little bit hard at the moment to use as a reference image because your model is so solid. So in that same menu in Draw, scroll down and you can change your fill mode. It's currently set to 1. If you change it to 3, it'll still, your model will still be there, but it's kind of transparent now and you can look through it quite easily and you can move around. So that is a really good way to use reference images, but I will link the other 4 ways that you can with ZBrush. This is just my favorite because you can easily toggle it off by just clicking floor again. So you can have a good look, turn on floor, turn it off, really great. So when you're using your reference images, and we turn to the side here, just as an example, I currently have ZBrush in a orthographic kind of mode. So if we think about how in Maya you have orthographic and you have perspective view, the perspective view kind of uses a little bit of depth to create some focal length to your model. And the same thing is happening in ZBrush. Currently I have it in orthographic. If I click perspective, we can see how the model will look in more of a natural kind of focal length. So if you don't want that, you just press perspective. Cool. I'm going to turn off my floor. All right, sweet. So now let's get into actually sculpting. So we've done our fabulous Zsphere model. We've changed it to an adaptive skin, and now we have a new tool, which, by the way, you should save immediately, and then you can make some new changes to it. All right, so I want to get rid of all of this kind of geometry that I'm seeing, this leftover geometry lines. I'm just going to press F to focus. What we can, what ZBrush does, it keeps track of how many polygons we are using at that time. And you can see that represented by the number up here called active points and total points. So currently my model consists of 235,000 polygons, which is pretty good for when we're blocking out a model. You don't want it to be too low, like 40,000, but you don't want it to be too high, like in the millions. That is for later on. You'll want to start off comfortably in the 100,000 kind of zone. And I'll talk about how to increase and decrease your geometry once we start modeling a little bit more. Okay, so into actual sculpting, we have our brushes along the side. So if you click on the brush menu, you have a whole host of default brushes. These are really fantastic, and there is a couple that people generally use for when they are kind of building up their sculpt roughly, and those are clay buildup. This one here, clay buildup, which you can get to if you type B for brush and then CB for clay buildup. It takes a little bit of practice using the hotkeys, but it's really efficient once you know them. So if you have a few really favorite brushes, you can just call out, you could just type out B for brush, CB for clay buildup, or you could do B for brush, SH for snake hook tool. It's kind of, yeah, it's pretty consistent. You just have to know the name of the tool that you want. Cool, so I want to create a nice base with this model. Now that it's been skinned, I want to smooth out all of that geometry. So I'm just going to increase my draw brush size, which is your brush in general. And if you hold shift, you can see that my brush has changed from red to blue, and that is smooth. And I'm using holding down shift to get to that. So you see, if I hover over my model and hold shift and click, it is smoothing everything out. It's a lot more efficient to do this process with the mouse because it's so heavy-handed. It can be tempting to just use your pen like normal, but if you just want to slick everything down, just use your mouse. It's way faster. Cool. Now we have an absolute creepy little person. Wicked. Okay, so that smooth tool, really, really helpful when you're starting out, but it can become really cumbersome once you start to do some detailing. At default, it is on its highest strength. Excuse you. So at default, it's on its highest strength. If I go up to brushes and I change it to clay buildup real quickly, and I just add some, okay, hold on. Add some, change my brush size. So with clay buildup, you can see I'm just adding on top of that geometry, making some little ears. If I hold shift, it's really quite intense. If you don't want it to be that intense once you're doing detailing, which by the way, don't do detailing yet, block out your whole thing super roughly with clay buildup, and you'll be able to go in with those finer details once that's all established. Cool, so just use your mouse and use that clay buildup tool, which by the way, you just click on the brush. Clay buildup is just on that top row. And you can just start to use smooth if you want to, build it up roughly. If you have activate symmetry on, you can see it's just doing it so quickly for you. Up, 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 up. Smooth, up, 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 up. Cool, so every single brush will have an opposite reaction if you hold option. Sorry, I was refreshing on a PC. So if you hold option and do the same thing, it's doing the opposite. So before clay buildup builds outwards, but if I hold option, it builds inwards like that. Fun, terrifying. Cool. I'll show you a couple more really great standard brushes. So there is the clay buildup one, obviously. You've also got the, I'm just going to go down. We've got the snake hook tool, which I mentioned before. So if I go down to the S, everything's alphabetized, by the way. So if I go down to snake hook and I pull out, you can see it's creating a little appendage. So the dangers of snake hook and moving when you're still in this low geometry phase. You see how this has just completely messed up my geometry? If I go undo, undo. What you want to do when you're really drastically manipulating your base geometry is turn on this Activate Sculptress Pro mode, and it's that little fancy symbol. Now, if I do that and do the same action again, it's actually restructuring my topology as I go. So, and you can see what your topology looks like, by the way. Under those navigation tools, there is the line fill poly F. If we turn that on, you can see all of your polygons, and they look really small because I have such a high poly count, but you can see the difference. If I pull out with the snake hook tool, you can see that it's actually just, if I zoom in, creating new geometry. So having this function on, the Activate Pro mode function, is just going to be really beneficial when you're modeling. If I don't have it on, you can see it's just messing with your topology. Cool. Zoom back out. So you can use the snake hook tool to create horns, claws, although I recommend when it comes to things like horns or tails or just appendages that you would want to have a little bit more care with, you can create a new piece of geometry, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Especially if it's a claw where it sits inside the geometry and there's skin around it, puffs up around it. It's the same with eyes. You wouldn't just sculpt your eyes, you would sculpt cavities for the eyes and then create new shapes to put in there. All right, so another cool brush is the Dam Standard. So BDS for Dam Standard. And that carves out. If I zoom in, turn off my grid. If you use Dam Standard, it carves out really nicely, and you can turn down the intensity of your brush up the top. So you can see I've turned it down. It's way less severe. Turn it up. It's carving out obviously much more. So play around with the intensity as well. Same with clay buildup. If you look like your clay buildup isn't doing a whole lot, try turning up that intensity. Cool, so Dam Standard again has the opposite effect if you hold Option and it carves outwards. Sweet, look at that, we're getting some stuff happening. Okay, so another really fantastic one is Move, which if you use a large draw size and you press Move, it just really takes a big chunk and manipulates it. So that's a great one, Move. But also if we jump back to Snake Hook, so BSH for Snake Hook, turn down my size, and I'm in Pro mode still. If I drag out another horn, which if you're dragging out a big shape, do it in stages, otherwise it can disappear like this, where it just disappears. So do it in stages. Drag it out a bit, 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 and make sure you're in Pro mode. So I have created some skinny little noodles. I want to thicken those up. Use the inflate brush to do that. So brush inflate is BIN. Take the brush, increase the size, and you can just inflate it like that. Very, very handy. Smooth that again. And we've got some fun little dual tail happening. Right, so toggling between Pro mode can be really helpful. You can always undo any action that you don't like by using this scroll up the top. It's very difficult to see, but there is a dark bar with steps, and where you are at the moment is at the end, and it's represented by a little orange square. If I drag that back, you can see my history undoing itself. Cool. All right, so if you are wanting to create some eyes or some claws, or you've made a really great arm and you want to just duplicate that arm across, you might be doing a 6-armed critter and you just want to make one arm. Makes sense, right? Then you don't have to sculpt several. You can append a tool and mirror a tool. So for eyes, for example, and this is the same method for all of these, you just want to go into your subtool menu. Oh, did I start the recording? Yeah. Subtool menu. And down in here, you have the option to append. It's a small little button, weirdly, but essentially it's going to bring up that same menu where you create some new shapes. So if I want to make an eye, I can just dump in a sphere 3D, and you can see it right there. It's, I'm not currently selecting it, so that's why it's a slightly different red. If I jump over to it, you see that red shift changes, and you can see who's who I've got on. By the way, if your geometry is no longer red, don't worry, you've just probably pressed a number and your material has changed to one of these. Who's laughing down there? That you clear? You're good. Okay, good. Sweet. So I've made this eye. If I want to move it and scale it, I can very easily just jump over to the move and scale, shrank it down, move it up with those same kind of anchor points that we have in Maya. That's too small. Push it back and move it off to the side. So it's really good to create an eye or eyes before you start sculpting in those sockets. It's good to have it there as a placeholder so that you can shape the lids around it. Sweet, so I have my little eyeball. Back to draw, you can make some changes to your shape. It doesn't matter. So if you're making a whole arm, make all those changes. Wonderful, love that for you. Now we've got our eye. We can just duplicate it. Again, in the subtool menu, press duplicate. You can see it's created another one, but it's in the exact same place. We can just click on that, make sure we have that menu selected, and then go down to deformation and click mirror, and it's just going to swap that over. If you have done an arm or a claw or whatever, it's the same situation. So I'm just going to quickly append a sphere. I'm going to move that sphere. Oh, make sure I'm clicked on the right one. Move the sphere, shrink it down, move it up into place. I'm just going to use the BSH for snake hook. Yes. Make a little claw. You can scroll down. If you're ever losing your geometry in this menu, you just have to scroll up, or you can change the visible numbers. Maybe that's not working. Anyway. So I scroll down, grab my claw, duplicate, move that one, duplicate, move that one. So I have my claws here. You can click on them and go to the merge tab, go merge down, okay, merge down again, okay, and now they are part of one subtool. So I want to create, I want to duplicate those across. It's the exact same method. We just duplicate, make sure you have it selected, deformation, mirror, and it's taken it across for you. So if you've made a really fantastic leg and you're making a six-legged dinosaur, just make one and then duplicate that around. And in our next session, I'll show you how to merge all this stuff together and use things like masking. Actually, I will show you masking quickly now because it's really helpful when you're doing your sculpting. So if I grab my main geometry again quickly, I'll just show you how to use mask. So you might have noticed if you are in draw mode, you've got your red for default, blue for smooth, but you also have command or control, the option for a yellow, and that is going to mask your geometry with this gray color. If you want to flip it, you just continue to hold that yellow color, click in this space, just empty space, and it's flipped it around. So now if I'm sculpting in here, it's not affecting the geometry that I don't have selected. Cool. You can also use this method to delete geometry. I'm going to show you this anyway, but just I'm going to show it again later, but I'll show you right now anyway, just in case you're wanting to power through. So if I want to create a flat foot, for example, you can grab the bottom of it by dragging out a mask, flipping it, and then in visibility, you can go hide part, and it's going to hide what you have selected. Now, if we turn over, you know, there's nothing there because that geometry is hidden. What we can do is delete the hidden by going up to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and it doesn't look like anything's happened because it was already invisible. But if we go then to close holes, we've created some nice flat feet, and we can just smooth that. So that's how you can get some nice flat feet. Okay, so that is it for today, and we will show you more tools next time. Have a go at exploring all these different things. It was a bit of an info dump, but this recording will be up on Vimeo for you to access.